In a world where gut health reigns supreme and doctor-patient relationships are evolving faster than your great aunt's sourdough starter, one man returns to Beyond Adjustments to drop wisdom bombs like probiotics in a kombucha factory. That's right, folks. Dr. Noah Segal is back for a deep dive edition of the show. Last time, he blew our minds, and this time, we're making him work even harder, exploring the unspoken intricacies of doctor-patient relationships in this wild, ever-changing world, and getting into the nitty-gritty of gut health, microbiomes, and why your stomach is basically running the show. We're going to uncover things like the do's and don'ts of building trust between doctors and patients. And here's a little hint. Googling symptoms at 2 a.m. might not be the best move. We'll talk about the microbiome mystery. Is your gut the mastermind behind your health or just a really picky eater? We'll discuss strange but true gut health facts that might make you rethink everything you've ever eaten or wish you hadn't. And of course, some gut-busting humor along the way, like that cheesy movie trailer opening that I just did. So grab your drink, your coffee, kombucha, water, whatever it is, buckle up, and let's get into it, because your gut and your doctor might just be the most important relationships in your life. Cue that funky music, white boy. Dr. Segal, welcome back to Beyond Adjustments. I'm so glad that you, one, decided to come back and I didn't scare you off, and two, that we're going to be diving into some really awesome stuff here.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity so much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Like I said in the intro there, we're going to be getting into some deeper or some topics that we actually covered on our last podcast together, but we're going to get into it just a little bit more, a little deeper, a little more information. So we're just going to focus on a couple of different topics so that we can actually spend a little bit more time on them. First thing I wanted to discuss was the doctor-patient relationship in kind of I'll call it our ever-changing world, right? Back in the day, when even back in our parents' time and even before them, doctors just said what they said and you took it as gold and you walked away and you did what they told you to do. Today, it's because of the information age that we live in, people are starting to question. And that's a good thing, because those same people actually become doctors and they're in your seat at this point, right? So you're questioning and things are evolving. So, but the biggest piece is the relationship, right? Patients are now feeling a little bit more empowered to have conversations with their doctors,
Right.
and that's a good thing. It's healthy. So, Dr. Siegel, you've seen healthcare evolve yourself, right? So what's the one thing you miss about the old school? Because some of it was good, right? But the old school doctor-patient relationship that today's system has lost.
Right. Okay, so listen, I'm not my grandparents' age, or they're not even alive anymore. Not my parents' age. But yeah, I think we've all, because the world is evolving so fast, I think we've all seen change, happen. I also come from a small town, so I think you could probably find some of this. I went from a small town to a big city, right? So I think if you're in small town America, you probably go back 20, 30, 40, even 50 years potentially. And I mean, gosh, even when I go to the west coast of Florida, it's like I'm going back in time. It's just a little more quaint, a little more slow. But I think the largest thing that's changed is the actual, it's also hard, right? Because I'm not part of the system, right? I mean, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm a doctor, but I'm not a surgeon in a hospital system. I'm not a gastroenterologist being bought out by a big conglomerate corporation. Although even today you have a
Right.
lot of intrusion of big corporate, um, to tons of change also in the quote unquote complementary and alternative medicine space. People, same situation, being bought up, where you have the joint, which is a corporate version of manual therapy, the chiropractic version, if you will. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen change is potentially just the relationship itself. I think you mentioned it. We all see all the commercials, and we talked about this a little bit last time in our last time together was,
Mhm.
ask your doctor about this or ask your doctor about that. And I think that is good. It's obviously, anything that triggers someone to think is good, right? But the relationship itself, I think if we talk about the system, um, largely there is less and less and less of the actual relationship. So the presence of the relationship is probably what's changed, not just the quality, um, but the actual existence of a quote unquote relationship. I think there's just not that relationship in the system. It's not designed for that because the system, remember, and I don't know how much we got into this last time, but the system itself is really designed for, I don't really care who you are or where you come from or what you do or what your socioeconomic status is or your religion or philosophy. I just want to fix your suture or get that bullet out of you, right? It's an acute care system. And the acute care system is phenomenal. It's the best in the world.
Yes.
But the chronic
Agreed.
care, I don't know that there is a system. I think we're writing the
Right.
system. But yeah, that relationship is just, I think what's changed is, doctors, and again, I'm not so old, but and I come from a smaller town, but the whole idea of a doctor coming with a bag. The last time I did that was, I mean, I was living in Israel, so a little bit of a different culture. It was 20, well, not 20, I guess closer to 15 years ago. So times have changed, but I used to show up with my bag. I didn't have an office. So I showed up with my bag and my stethoscope was in there and my, you know, different tools, my otoscope and whatnot. And people were like, aren't you a chiropractor? I'm like, yeah, but you gotta look at your eyes and up your nose and your ears and take your blood pressure, right? So just the idea that doctors are touching people and listening and looking is what's changed probably. If I had to say, that's what's changed. I don't know who's looking in their
Yeah.
eyes. I mean, eye doctors do, but when was the last time you went to a primary care doctor and said you have headaches and they looked in your eyes? They probably just say, "Oh, headaches,
Right.
whatever drug is for that, whatever."
Yeah. 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 It's funny that you said that you had a bag and that you would go. That's actually my earliest memory of a doctor. And funny enough, in Israel, I was home. I was actually at my cousin's house, so we lived on top of each other. And I was upstairs, probably like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. And I remember him having like a really bad fever or some. He was just really sick. And I remember the doctor walking in with his black bag and setting it down and taking care of him. And I even remember one more vulgar circumcision that I was, but it was in the house.
Sure.
So yeah, that's funny. Kind of when you said that, it took me all the way back. It's kind of funny,
Well, it's like,
but
if we ask you and I said, hang up a phone, we go like this, right? But you ask kids today, hang up a phone, they go, boop. So same thing. I don't think our
yeah,
kids will have memory. I mean, listen, I still have a black bag. It sits on the floor in right behind me because I keep my stuff in.
yeah,
I do still listen to hearts and lungs and check blood pressure and look in eyes. And I just,
sure.
oh my gosh. I mean, my kids, I don't know how my son did this. He managed to get so much sand. We live near the ocean. He went to the beach. He came home and he's like, I feel like there's something in my ear. So I go to the office, 10 o'clock at night, get my otoscope. I come home and I'm looking. I'm like, oh my gosh, bro. It was like looking in a cave. There was these quartz crystals and stalactites and pieces of shells. And I was like, you're 11 years old. We always go to the beach. What were you doing? Slamming your head into the sand? Anyway. And yeah,
So like,
so just, looking in his ears, I was able to see, and then we stopped taking him to an ENT. I hope my wife gets in there today or tomorrow. I don't know. I got a lot of it out.
yeah.
I could not. There was pieces of shells on his tympanic membrane. So I still use
Oh no,
my black doctor bag. Still using it.
gotcha. So, do you think patients today are more empowered or more confused? Like, are they making better decisions about their health? You think?
Oh man, that's a bombshell question. I hate to like. Yes. um, honestly, and I hate to say, you sound like a doctor, but I think they're more
How dare
confused.
you?
I I think they're more confused because sometimes even I'm confused. And I tell patients this all the time. I tell them, because they'll come to me with a problem, right? And
Yeah,
they'll say two things. They'll say, help me, but don't overwhelm me. Yeah, even if they don't say that, I know they don't want me to overwhelm. So I'll say, great, and I come up with a plan for them. And maybe I ask them to change some of what they eat, change some of what they think, change some of what they do, and take a few medicines, which I think is a lot to ask them somebody. And they'll come back to me and they'll go, well, I was listening to Dr. So and so. I won't even mention names, but the popular people that people listen to. And do you think I should do this too? And I'm like, well, you could. I mean, there are endless things that someone could do for themselves. And that's part of the relationship. I always say to them, look, I'm really proud of you. You got to be your own advocate. So I appreciate the question. On the other hand, you hired me to kind of like tell you no, like
Sure.
don't do that right now. There is a lot of
Right.
confusion. There's even confusion. I mean, again, just to kind of open up my heart a little bit to everyone listening. I mean, there's confusion with doctors, like and I don't know if we'll talk about it later or not, but that's one of the things that I think, is so valuable with anyone in my position is I'm going to sit there and I'm really thinking, and it can get confusing because there's research for almost anything you want to see, you can
Yeah.
find. So, even the research itself, yeah, it can be confusing, but I would say largely on
Sure.
a whole perspective here, that's a little more confused. It's a confusing world with the amount of information.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, if I'm being honest, because the contrast of our the older generations just not asking questions and leaving it up to the curious few to go and do the research, I think is also terrible. But I think asking the questions and having the conversations and feeling empowered to make the right decisions for your health is amazing. But when you start listening to this and this and this and this and this all at the same time, you obviously get confused because you're
Yeah.
getting all these different pieces of info, and that's what's happening with our phone, right?
Yes.
It's literally in front of our face all day, and we're being hit with all this
Ping,
information
ping,
left and right
ping.
constantly, notification after notification, news article after news article, it's constantly hitting. So there's definitely a happy medium that we need to find, but I don't think we're going to get there yet because we went from one extreme to now another extreme, especially now with AI being introduced. But I think once that hype dies down
Right.
and we have access
Hopefully.
to it, I think we're gonna hopefully, and I'm not saying AI is going away. I just mean the
No.
hype of it.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll find the happy medium and just be a healthier community because we're asking questions, because we're looking at the science behind it. I think it's important. But so that brings me to the technology piece, right? Because technology is now playing a huge role in care. And the question is it helping or is it actually hurting? Is it hindering our healthcare system or our health in general? Right? You have telehealth, you have wearables, AI driven diagnostics, which are amazing because you could feed it all the information in the world
For sure.
and get all the possibilities, right? How much of this is actually improving care, in your opinion, and how much of it is just adding more noise to the doctor's office?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. And my mind was going a little bit back to also just the older generation and the younger generation. I think sometimes, and I don't know, I think there's multiple factors that are going into this, but from my seat or from my perspective, like sometimes it's easier to help the older generation. Like they're empowered to receive help only almost partially because they also empower me because they don't ask so many questions. I think again, it's important to be an advocate, but I find the younger generation, because they have, I think, a greater appreciation for the access to technology. Like I'll have, 20-year-old or 25-year-old come in with like, significant chronic lower back pain, if you will. That's not normal, and I'm gonna help them. But like
Right.
they may not allow me to because they've got so much. They're like, well, but what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And maybe I'll think about it. And and then the older person's like, totally get it, man. Like, I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll see you Friday, and
Yeah.
I'll see you next week,
Yeah.
and then we'll do a check-in, and we'll check the range of motion,
Yeah.
and we'll get that MRI,
Yeah.
and like, let's go. So I think that's where I guess my feelings about the confusion come in. Just thinking about anecdotally, like the struggle with treating a younger patient versus the
Hmm.
ease of treating people from the 1900s. And 1900s people, I heard that the other day. It was really funny. But to get to your
That is
question,
funny.
um, I read a book in college that changed my life and changed my perspective. I actually reached out to the author. Um, I was at Stockton College, or yeah, that was university, but Stockton College in New Jersey at the time, small liberal arts college, and I took a course. I don't remember the course. I remember the professor, Professor Sevia. She was interested in Eastern European descent and very contrarian. I don't remember the course topic totally, but I remember she made us read books that were like, whoa. And one of them was about like the coming plague, which basically spoke about COVID-19, but this was like 30 years before COVID-19, because these
Mhm.
plagues, right, 100 years or so in a
Of
cycle.
course.
And the
Right.
potential with globalization and everything that happens and the cross contaminations or whatever, cross communications. Um, and it was a book called The
Yeah.
Arrogance of Humanism by David Ehrenfeld. And The Arrogance of
Okay.
Humanism was essentially stating the religious perspective that besides Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Hinduism, and everything, you have this humanism. Humanism is the belief that humans can solve all problems with technology. And what David Ehrenfeld, the
Okay.
author, was basically presenting was something I think we see in our lives, right? Everything that we create as a human being to solve a problem usually solves the problem so well that it creates one or two or three or even more other new problems.
Mm.
And so, as beneficial as all the technology is, I think there's always an inherent challenge that that by nature of it being a humanistic potential and us being less than perfect, it creates this other, whether we see it now or tomorrow, yesterday or today, there's a problem
Yeah.
usually, and more. So, look, noise. I think we can get busy. I remember when I started my business, one of my mentors who was a doctor told me, like, don't just sit at your desk all day moving papers thinking you're busy. Go get patients. You need people in your door to help. And same thing. I think
Right.
we can get very busy, like looking at, heart rate variability and our aura ring and our sleep cycle. And I have to try again. This is where I think the valuable part of the relationship comes in if people can know, like, and trust the provider they're working with for us to be able to almost in a coach perspective, which I guess I do a lot of coaching these days. The doctor patient relationship has changed. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think some of it is noise, and I think some of it is generally helpful, genuinely helpful, and I can't deny that because I use it. Right? I mean, I'm using
Yeah.
advanced technology in my practice to help people. So
Sure.
yes, it's both. I think like everything, right? There's a balance. We don't want to feed into people's neuroses, and we don't want to feed into doctors' neuroses either, whether it's about generating data to feel busy or to feel smart, or to feel like you're
Sure.
expensive or have to justify the price of your time. At the
Right.
same time, yes, there's potentially very valuable information. I think one of my favorite ones is this one that the people are wearing now for the blood glucose. I mean, that's great.
Mm.
Like when you're dealing with someone with metabolic syndrome or just, diabetes, whatever, the pricking fingers, man, that's rough. I don't know if you've done that. I ask people to do it a lot.
My wife has.
Yeah, and this is a very convenient, like, boop, you just put it in for a day or a week. Or I think it's about a week, boop, all day long. Boop, boop. But again, also then we have to get to a place where I have this conversation. I tell people to appreciate the health they have also, because, you know,
That's right.
man, you're just all day long, beep, 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 beep. It's like, oh no, oh no, oh, no. Or, don't be like that. It's a thing. There's pluses and minuses. Good question.
Yeah.
Hope I answered
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, you did for sure, but I get that whole pricking thing. You're right. Appreciate what you have. She had gestational diabetes with one of her kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was not fun. So you said you use technologies with your patients, right? So have you had a moment where technology maybe transformed a patient's outcome in a way that maybe wouldn't have been possible without that technology, or did it speed it up? Or
I mean, I think the obvious answer to that question has to be yes. I don't know about like, again, time frame. I think I'm too young potentially to see. I think if we talk about 20 years, 15 years, 25 years, back when I was in college and they were finishing up the Human Genome Project, like those are major changes. Today, I'm kind of using that information. I do see it changing all the time. I see the labs growing in their efficiency, sensitivity, and specificity, and the diversity of information. But I don't know that I could pinpoint like a specific, you know, especially a
mm,
time frame of 5, 8, 10 years like that. Like I don't know. I'm kind of playing with the toys that I've been given, the tools that I've been given. Dramatic changes because of technology. Nah, I think that is a bit. Look, it's interesting. I just was at the dentist recently, and I was fascinated with some of the newer. I was just schmoozing with them, just talking, because I like to talk to people about their professions. I find dentistry very similar to chiropractic. I like to talk to dentists. I think they get a lot of the same um, challenges. And yeah, I don't know. There's actually for me personally, that's why I think I got into what I got into, right, with the microbiome and the blood chemistry. and the labs, because that's like the advanced technology that I can use as a chiropractor, right? But there's probably been tremendous, I mean, I know there has been dentistry and different materials, right? And different tools
Sure.
in
That's right.
surgery.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But for me personally, I can't say that I can answer that question with tremendous depth.
Gotcha. I mean, well, I'll stretch you here a little bit because I wouldn't take for granted some of the testing that you do, right? Because
Right.
I'm sure there's tests that you're doing that are kind of giving you and laying the foundation for what you're working with that patient, right? And
Correct.
maybe 5, 10 years ago, that test didn't exist, right? I would consider that a technology investment
Well,
advancement. No,
right, right. I mean, yeah, I think if we go far enough back, we could say yes, that the technology didn't exist. But I mean,
yeah.
PCR analysis is a very old school type of analysis that's being used
Oh,
now for
okay.
DNA. But the polymerase chain reaction, it's, we learned about that in bio and it, great,
Okay.
not great. Well, maybe it was grade school. I don't know. Multiple decades been around, and then DNA. I think DNA is fascinating.
Gotcha.
That's probably the genetics side of it. The DNA side of it is probably, and again, that's
Yeah.
already when I was in college, right, 20+ years ago. That was when we were finishing the Human Genome Project, and ever since then, it's been
Mm,
almost like that AI. We see like AI. Hey, AI exists. 2 years later, it's like, get the AI off of me. It went from like this obscure thing to like it all day long in your eyes and in your brain and in your attitude in your life. I think the DNA, the genetics is probably where that technology is really, especially now, really with AI. Oh my gosh, man. With AI driven um, brains to process the DNA information and then to give clinical relevance to it. That's what's actually maybe in time we'll do one on genetics because I'm leapfrogging a little bit, getting very excited again these days about genetics. I think because the technology is driving the clinical potential usefulness of that information.
gotcha. So on the flip side of that, have you ever felt like a patient might have been hiding behind technology instead of engaging in like real communication? So, we're that this is kind of a mixed question, right? We're talking about the doctor patient relationship and technology, right? Yes, technology's helped. It might have hurt in some cases, but do you think that the technology that we have access to today maybe hindered that between that doctor patient
Yeah,
relationship?
it cheapens it. It makes it really, really, really almost too efficient, too easy. Communication, I mean, we see that in general with humanity, right? Like if someone
Mm,
was in your town and they saw you every day at the, local haircutting place or the bar or the grocery store, they probably wouldn't say the things that they say to you if you're just some, random human, or if they think less than
yeah,
human on a screen or on an email chain. Or I get a lot of, I don't want to sound, use inappropriate language, like tire kickers, like people reach out and it's like because of technology, right? Because I've set up these technological marketing information portals, right? Funnels and things like that. So people come in and then it's just like, I'm like, well, really? Like, I am a person at the end of this chain, and they just kind of like take and run or ask really weird
yeah,
questions and run or sometimes I've had people I think be less than appreciative or even I have been maybe potentially less than appreciative. Like I remember there was this recently I had interaction where someone came to with a very, very sick child and I mean they spent money and I always want to make sure I'm giving my all and they weren't allowing me to, right? And it wasn't really personal. They just were very busy. They were overwhelmed. Their child was very sick. Once we put ourselves in the shoes, we can understand that. But they like missed visit after visit after visit. And I was just like, once I finally got them on the phone, I was like, lady, I really worked hard to help your family. Like, and now you're coming and asking all these questions. And now I don't want to, not that I don't want to answer them, but like, this is a doctor patient relationship, right? I feel like, you disappeared for 3 months and now you're back and we lost a lot of time. And she let me know, like that wasn't, I'm dealing with a very sick child. I'm very overwhelmed. I didn't mean to, Dr. Siegel, and I don't appreciate the way you're talking to me. So I think it goes both ways, right? And I was like, oh, right, right. And I apologized and I kind of collected myself, but that was, I guess, not to be too transparent or too vulnerable, but that's like also that doctor patient relationship, right? It's like I'm trying to control because I'm trying to help.
yeah,
If it's a free for all, I can't help. But at the same time, every single person needs a different level uh, or benefits, I should say, from a different level of control or The relationship with
Right.
me is different. It's not even the doctor-patient relationship. It's the doctor individual,
Right.
every single person individually. And that's an interesting masquerade. What did you ask
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah.
I've read it on,
No,
man.
no, it's all good. We were just talking about, the communication and how patients could
Of
hide
hiding
behind
behind
the
it.
technology and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, not taking
yeah, yeah.
responsibility, like, just an email. Like when
Right.
health, right? Like with health, a chronic health problem, right? When it became, they're on a liver
Yeah.
transplant list. I think I don't know if we talked about the story last night, but like, and then they come through an internet funnel, and then or they hear about you from their aunt Sally on Facebook, and then they email you, and then you email them back, and they kind of become your patient. They've never sat with you. They never come into your office, right? It's a blessing because I can help someone far away, but yeah, there's a potential belittling of the situation when it's not to be. It's it's a significant. The relationship's health is, like we said, that's what I think what drove the second podcast is the doctor patient relationship is sacred and we've lost it.
It is. It is. And unfortunately we have. But I think we're getting it back because I'm seeing pockets of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that's good. You made a comment in your rant. I mean, when you were answering the question, you said something about weird questions, right? They come in with these weird questions, and I think that has to do with a lot of the misinformation, social media. So that's kind of where this next question is leading to is like, what's because of all this misinformation and the social media and I guess I would say it's a doctor's dilemma at the end of the day because you're dealing with this day in and day out. What's the craziest thing, like, or most outlandish thing or medical fact a patient ever came in believing?
So, and I think, it goes full circle back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier, where when you have like information, and by the way, usually it's all
That's
true.
right.
So that's very confusing because
Mm,
it's not like it's this or that. And that's something I deal with a lot with patients, not, the medical drugs and surgery or not drugs and surgery. Maybe it's both,
right.
right? And so, yeah, when everything is true, that's a problem. But sometimes things are not true. And I
Yeah.
think the craziest thing
Yeah.
I heard, and it was cultural, right? But it was a patient talking about um, putting birds on belly buttons for hepatitis, and they would not be convinced. I tried to explain to them that I didn't feel that that was, and not that I was treating their hepatitis, not that they had hepatitis, but it was this medical fact they knew for sure from Europe, and I was just like, yeah, that there's I don't know. No, no. But look, I'm biased, right? And so I think the challenge with social media for me as a
Yeah.
chiropractic physician is twofold. One, that these look, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's great that people are seeing people adjusting people online, and there's these TikTok doctors and there's these YouTube doctors and chiropractors, right? Chiropractic doctors. And, it doesn't always happen every single day in the office. Now, yes, magic does happen every single day in the office, but sometimes the expectations, right? Someone comes in with 20 years of back pain and they're like, I saw this YouTube video, this guy in LA, that's a very curated experience of multiple weeks boiled down to a 20-minute little episode and they fast forward it all. And the expectation there is I'm going to just or the skeleton, right? And they're going to leave fixed. And I think that's the old school thing about chiropractic. That's the magic of it
Yeah.
that people are like, oh my gosh, you just threw me around. I don't know, but now I feel better. Now that's just been the fire has been, the gasoline's been poured on the fire of social media with that, right?
Right.
A
Right.
hundred years ago at
Right.
circuses, okay. But now it's like, people are either they expect magic or they think that I'm, you know, going to hurt them. God forbid.
Yeah. I think they also can get themselves in trouble with that too. It might be, they might come in with a piece of information that might be, crazy or kind of out there, but I think some of that information could hurt them too.
Oh yeah.
So like, and I'm sure you deal with this day in and day out. And what's like a common, I would say, what's a common harmful piece of advice that kind of patients are picking up online from these doctors that you're constantly having to debunk?
You know, if I could say it again, I don't want to sound too biased, but maybe I think it's harmful to think that chiropractic care is dangerous. I think that's harmful. I think a lot of doctors
Mm,
are, other chiropractors who are burnt out or feel whatever vilification they feel from doing it or vindication, and to vilify chiropractic and care, and then other doctors, right? There's other I see there's a PT or two or three that are very vocal on social media about the dangers of chiropractic. And then there's, the surgeons who, orthopedic surgeon watches chiropractor and, would never do this, and it's like, man, didn't you go to the same anatomy class that I went to? Like, don't you
Right.
understand how the body works?
Right.
And don't- you're
Right.
going to solve every problem with a pill. People need to be touched, man. People need to be manipulated. Soft tissue, osseous.
Yeah.
This is not dangerous. And I think so that's a dangerous piece of because people miss opportunities, right? I think, right, they always say, if you ask people who are dying, what's their greatest regret is never what they did, right? Usually they'll say on these little things, I like to read these things, I don't know, a little dark, but the greatest regret is usually what they did. Almost always what they didn't do, never what they did.
Right.
So that's dangerous
Yeah.
to potentially leave out or wait. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you like this. I had a guy in his 80s in my office a couple weeks ago, suffering for 50 years. 50 years is a long time. Broke his nose,
Yes.
and went to a lot of doctors, and they all told him, "Nah, you're just getting older. You'll never breathe out of that nostril again." Blah blah blah. Came into my office. I explained to him the bilateral nasal specific or cranial facial release technique. Put the balloon in his nostril, inflated it, manipulated the bones of the skull and face. He sat up and said, "Dr. Segal, thank you so much. I feel so different now." He wasn't permanently changed perfect forever, but that was like magic in the
Yeah.
office. 50 years of pain
Yeah.
and suffering, ENTs,
Wow.
internists. Nah, nothing you could do. How about go see my chiropractic friend or go see my DO friend or go see my physical therapist
Mm.
who's doing this technique, which has been around over 100 years, right? Like this is the stuff where, I mean, again, I always feel grateful for the opportunity to provide that service, have that karma exchange of money and time and service, because that's how I feed my family and take care of myself. But what?
Of course.
Why did that guy have to suffer for 50 years? Like, I shouldn't have to do that. That should have been fixed a long time ago. I'm not doing some
That's insane.
miraculous, newfangled thing. So anyway, that's dangerous. The people not
Yeah.
having access to it is
Yeah. Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I know how you're going to answer this question, but what's one, like, if you could ban one piece of medical information forever, what would it be?
Oh man, did I already say it? Did I already answer it? Like yeah, like I would
I,
ban
I think, I think I
Yeah,
know.
I would ban the
I think I
medical
know.
misinformation that chiropractic is dangerous. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Totally,
Yeah.
totally crazy. And if I didn't say it before, that's the debunking. I didn't think about it earlier. That's what I have to debunk constantly. I feel like I'm in my office. They're coming and they're grateful. They want to be here, but I'm also sometimes, I mean, I'm spending a lot of my time, my valuable time debunking, getting them to not be afraid that I'm not going to hurt them. And it's like, there should be more excitement, like there, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's that's
Yeah.
craziness.
Well, but it's because you're dealing with people.
And you're touching them and you're touching them. You're really getting
Yeah.
involved
Yeah.
in their space.
And when humans are involved, you never know what they really want. Well, maybe you do,
Nah,
but
I don't
I don't
know.
think they know what
They
they
don't know
really
what they want,
want.
but that's the thing. And I ask that, and people go crazy. I mean, they're like, it's
Yeah.
the funniest reaction. I should film like a little tie. I don't wear ties, but a little secret camera every time and then make like a
Yeah.
montage of like 100 just quick reactions to this question because it's hilarious. They'll come in, right? Let's just use back, right? They're bent over, like, and I sit them down and I go through everything: location, mechanism of injury, newness, onset, palliative, provocative, range of motion, examination, DTR, whatever, neuro, ortho. And then I look at them and I go, okay, so what do you want? Why are you here? And they're like, well, what do you mean? My back hurts. I'm
What
like,
do you
yeah, but,
mean?
but what do you really want? Like if you want your back to feel better, you can
Yeah.
just be home with that feel. Like, why are you here? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's always an
Yeah.
interesting question, but yeah, they don't often know.
That's funny.
And I have to drag it out of them. Oh, I'm going to go to the casino this weekend and I don't know if I could sit long enough with my wife to do that experience. Oh, now I know what you
Yeah.
want. They didn't know. It takes me time.
Well, I could tell you this. I mean, I think there's been a shift in patient expectations, right? Because whether whether they really know what they want or not, they're always saying things like they want a doctor that is, that's accessible, that's highly knowledgeable, tech savvy, deeply passionate about what they do. is that even a realistic expectation?
Can we be controversial on your podcast?
Uh, this is I want truth
So
is
dare
what
I
I want.
say they want all that and they also don't want to pay for it. That's I think the saddest part
Mm,
that I experience because you know, I do my best to provide that. I'm far from perfect. I'm not perfect. But, when someone comes in, they're like, I want all that. I'm like, great, I'm going to give it to you. But then they're like, oh, but I want to use insurance. And I'm like, but your insurance doesn't include all that. Did your insurance provider tell you that they don't pay for all that? So yeah, I think it's a lot, and that's where that Dr. Burnout comes from. Again, I don't know, I don't want to blend or get distracted or go on a rant, but yeah,
no,
I
you're
think
fine.
I think it's a high expectation. I think it's reasonable. Patients should expect that. Doctors should expect to have to provide that, but the energetic exchange also has to be fair. I don't think it's reasonable to expect a doctor to be a rag, and I think it's reasonable for a doctor to expect a patient to just be a robot or be a rag either.
Sure.
They shouldn't be expected to mortgage their house to get better. I mean, again, we don't control doctors
Yeah.
don't control the actual financial. What if someone has cancer. I mean, it's not my fault. And things cost money and there's no guarantees in life besides death. And I guess they say taxes. Although I don't know how these big
Yeah.
corporations, they seem to only avoid the taxes thing. I don't know how they do it. But so I think it is reasonable. I think it's very difficult. I'm part of that world. I'm part of that ecosystem. And it's funny, it harpers back for me all the way back to childhood when my best friend said to me, Noah, you expect a lot but you're a great friend too. Like you give a lot, but you also expect a lot.
Mm,
But there is that it's an equal exchange. Like I don't feel like, you're asking too much of me or taking too much from me. And I think that's
right.
the dance that if they want all that, that's fine. But it's going to come at a price of time,
Of
resources and
course.
energy also from the patients.
Of course. Of course. How do you see the role of the doctor evolving in the next decade with all that's happening, right? Are we heading towards like a concierge style care, or like is our AI and chatbots going to replace that personal touch? I hope not.
It's funny, like asking all these questions. I'm like, do I merit to answer these questions? I mean, who am I, right? But yes, I think both. The way you ask questions, it's almost like the answer is yes, because I think we're doing this, right? I think, they talk about economically, and I'm
Yeah.
no economist, but they say the middle class is shrinking. If the middle class is shrinking, that means the lower class is growing and the upper class is growing. So I think you have the same thing. I think you
Hmm.
have this sort of whatever was normative 50 years ago is totally disappearing. And you're moving very fast into like a CVS, Amazon, drone delivered, AI delivered, chatbot delivered, totally not personal healthcare, personal meaning with humans healthcare. And then you have like the like concierge, like Dr. Segal, the versions of what I do, which is individualized and concierge and very human. I mean, I pick up the phone when people call my office. There's no phone trees, right? I think you have this going on where you're having less and less of normative middle ground and you're getting a lot more of one and the other, I think still leaves a lot to be desired because something, and that's where I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know if we've talked about this, but that's like, I'm like at like a wall. I'm trying to figure out how do I solve the problem? Like if I
Mm.
could solve that problem for healthcare in America, um, I would feel really fulfilled because
Sure.
to be able to
I think
provide
anybody would.
to be able to provide that level of service at this level of efficiency to all of these people, that's my dream.
Yeah. I think with where we're heading, I think the face or the entry for a patient will be an AI, but I think it needs to end with a touch from a doctor. I think the way it needs to be designed is the AI will give the information, but it will just be information, and it should direct the patient not to just take it for what it's worth, but actually take it to a doctor and say, hey, this is what I learned based on the information I fed this AI model, whatever it's called at the time. And, you know, what do you think? Right? Bring it to somebody that's actually in the profession that understands. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Well,
We'll see.
I mean, think about
But
driving, right? Like, what is it? My buddy's got this Tesla, and it's always beeping at him. Keep your hands on the wheel. It's auto driving, but it wants his hands on the wheel. So that's the same thing, right? It's like, okay, we can have AI sort of like largely perceptually in control, but like the human is still there, not just in case, but you know, that's like an analogy I'm thinking about, where like, yes, the AI is there, but we're gonna keep our hands on the wheel. Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm going to take that analogy a step further because I think that's actually a great analogy. But because you do have Teslas where you don't need your hand on the wheel. My sister-in-law has a Tesla that has full self-driving, which you put in an address and that thing takes off. Um, and you don't have to put your hand, so you have to trust that it's going to make the right decisions at every intersection, at every turn, and although that's cool, it it it's not where we want to take healthcare. It's not where we want to take that doctor relationship or patient doctor relationship. I think that's dangerous. A funny story. We're in her car. She had just bought it, and she's like, I was like, let's take it out for a drive. She's like, yeah, let's go. So I got in the driver's seat. I put in my address. Car just takes off. And I'm just sitting back because I trust Elon Musk, I guess. I don't know. But I'm just sitting back and I'm like, this is cool, a cool experience. She's sitting in the driver's seat. She's like hyperventilating, like, like doing all these, put your foot on the brake, put your foot on the brake. And I'm just letting it go. Like, but that's not what we want when it comes to your healthcare. You don't want to just sit there, press an autopilot button and go. The more we understand our health and the more we have these conversations, the more we ask questions, the more we sit in front of a doctor like yourself, the better it is for us. Yes, AI is great. Yes, the automation. I think what it's going to help us do if we do it the right way, the most is get to answers quicker
Right.
because our brains can't think as fast as AI. But if we brain dump into the AI models all the right information, it's going to help us come to a conclusion or a diagnosis way faster than you or any other doctor could come up with. But it's what you do with that diagnosis that's important.
Right. Right. So that's the
You get what I'm
thing.
saying? Like
That's the thing, right? It's first of all, it's a very deeply philosophical conversation, which we could totally do a deep dive on. This is getting very interesting, and my brain's now going, like
yeah,
thinking and all this stuff. But it's the
yeah,
same thing, right? Like I always make the joke, like sometimes I don't know, like, do I need a doctor to write Xanax? Like I'm anxious. You need a doctor to write Xanax? I mean, a robot could do that. Same thing with an adjustment. You need a doctor to like your neck hurts. You need a doctor to like do that. I mean, a robot could do that. So what is a doctor doing? And it's that safety net, I think, is really what it is. And it's kind of, look, we trust our militaries. We need humans. We trust each other. I don't know. This is getting very deeply philosophical.
yeah. And but I would challenge that. I don't think a doctor. I don't think a robot can do an adjustment. I'm just saying that's. I don't think we can ever get there
Listen, man,
because
there's those upper cervical specific guys they have this whole, right? You see those upper cervical guys?
yeah,
It's this
yeah,
whole big
yeah,
machine. And that's changing
yeah,
people's lives. I don't know, man.
yeah. I just can't see Optimus Prime coming in and like cracking my neck and doing. I can't see it happening.
You're
We'll
a
see. We'll
purist.
see.
You're a
We'll see.
purist.
Again, we'll watch Elon. I guess when he comes out with his
Chirotron
robots.
3000.
Yeah,
Tesla chiropractor coming next year.
love it. It'll happen. I mean, the guy's going to
Tweet him,
space.
man. Tweet at
He'll
him.
do
Be like, oh, if
something.
you're going to Mars, can you make a robot chiropractor? Just see what he says. I don't have Twitter. I would do
Oh
it.
man. All right, so let's rate it back a little. Let's talk about our healthcare system. So, and it's this is also a much deeper conversation here. We can constantly double click on these topics. I love
Yeah.
it, but if so, let's talk about redesigning the healthcare system, right? So if you could redesign it yourself to better serve both the doctors and the patients, what's one radical change you'd
Oh,
make?
you know what I'm gonna say. I would totally eliminate the
I know a lot
insurance.
of your answers, but they don't.
I would
So
eliminate the
tell
insurance
them.
industry. Totally gone. Just get it
Yeah,
completely out of the
yeah,
picture.
yeah,
All the CEOs can
yeah.
go get
That's
jobs somewhere in my office. Like they can figure out really how to
yeah,
help people. That
yeah.
whole situation. I mean, things have to be paid for. And I don't have the answer per se, so I struggle to pick on it too much. But that's 100%. I see that as such a barrier. I mean, people are so messed up with it.
Mm,
They're like, when they call an office and the first thing they say, like, if you were, oh my gosh, we all like food, we all like restaurants, right? And I was just like, imagine if I want to go to this restaurant, but the first question you ask them is like, do you take my diner's card? Like everyone, when you're bored, you're given a card, you're limited to these restaurants. Like, do you take my diner's card? Like, this is craziness. Like you go to the person who can help you and let them do what they need to do. The insurance industry
I
driving the
agree.
relationship at the get go or driving what the doctor does or what the patient has access to
Yeah,
is insane
yeah.
because it's not about health. They're profit driven companies. And I don't think it's okay to shoot them, God
100%.
forbid. I don't think any of that's okay.
Oh,
That's all
100%
crazy.
no.
That conversation is crazy.
Yeah,
That's how dangerous the insurance industry is. That the culture that we're like like there's a lot of conversation that's justifying that violence
I
because the
know. It's
industry is violent.
insane.
And so yeah,
Yeah,
easy eliminate the insurance industry,
company. I agree. I
government and private pay maybe.
I
I don't know.
wonder, do we eliminate or do we come up with a better system? Like, so for example, you have what's that company? MetaShare? You heard of MetaShare, I'm
Oh,
sure.
like the yes, like almost like a co-op,
Yeah,
like collectives.
yeah, yeah, and people are finding that their healthcare is covered better under that because they don't have to necessarily, be within these guidelines and have to check 15,000 boxes in order to get a certain kind of care.
Right.
um, you know, have that cushion, right? Pay into something that is much larger than you and figure out a way to get your health, whatever, taken care.
I mean,
Hopefully you'll never
listen,
need it,
that's
right?
not
I don't know.
capitalist.
I don't
I
know.
don't know either. That's not capitalist. Again, I think these are really weird
Yeah.
and interesting, deeply philosophical conversations
Yeah.
because we're taking
Yeah.
like an economic model and a culture and a society and a democratic
That's true.
revolution, and then we're talking about aspects of it which are so potentially socialist, nationalist, communist, and it's like how
Yeah.
to blend all that
Yeah.
politically,
Yeah. That's a fine
financially,
line for
right?
sure.
It's
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
You're
don't
right.
know.
You're right. We don't
So
want to
that's
go
why,
down the
again, that's where
socialist
sort of the
path. Absolutely.
privacy of the
Yeah.
sacredness of that doctor. I really feel like a huge responsibility. Someone pays me and then I get into it. It's personal. They, no one's controlling what they do because they paid me. No one's controlling what I do because they paid me. And we're working together as a team with no oversight, which I mean, I guess potentially not no oversight. I mean, obviously I have I mean, I'm a licensed physician. There's plenty of oversight in my industry, but yeah, freedom. I don't know. Freedom blending with
Yeah.
control. It's an interesting, I don't know.
I think we did this podcast wrong, Dr. Siegel, because I think we should have just picked one topic.
I know. It's like,
We're
and these are
we're
deep
running out of
things.
time here, and
And
now we
yeah,
got to jump into the gut health
let's
here,
jump.
man.
Let's
I
jump.
it's
Let's keep it rolling. We'll do it as exciting as
Yeah,
we
let's do
can.
it. So, yeah, let's get into this topic here. We could, like I said, we could double click on all this stuff and just kind of go off on tangents, which I would love to do. So, guess what? You're coming back again to my show, whether you like it or not. But we'll see.
Sounds good, buddy.
Um, you're gonna be my regular. It's gonna be amazing. Doctor Noah's back. All right, let's talk about the gut health, the microbiome, and let's get into that a little bit. I'm calling this kind of question more of like a crash course of the microbiome. Yes, we touched on it in our last podcast together, but if you can explain the microbiome to a 5-year-old, aka me, how would you do it?
You're gonna love this. So I always talk to people about think about your life. You are basically, you put food in your mouth, little Johnny, right? They go, yeah. And then you know how food comes out of your butt, little Johnny? Like, yeah. Like, well, you're just this worm from your mouth to your butt, and your arms and your legs are just connected to that worm. And inside that worm, there's just thousands of doors, and every door you open is a magical land. And patients love it, man. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Okay.
You know? That's what it is. It's really that that's what we are. That's what it is. It's just a magical land, and behind every door, there's just a whole world.
Yeah. I actually love that explanation. I'm gonna use that.
Take it, man.
I'm gonna
Run with
use
it.
that. I mentioned to my son, he's 15. I mentioned to him that I'm gonna be doing this podcast again. And I mentioned something about microbiome. He's like, micro who? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm jumping on with him so he can explain it to me. So I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna go back to him,
It's
tell him,
easy,
yeah,
man, and
it's
it's you
one
won't
big
forget it.
worm that
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So we hear gut health is very important. But why?
I mean, so many reasons, right? We're we don't have time all morning to talk about it, but there are like 9, I guess, clinically identified different axes, right? 9.
Mm,
So gut brain, gut liver, gut skin, gut heart, gut immune, right? And there's 9 of them. Gut bone. Um, and again, I think we touched on this a little bit last time too, but there's just so much humanity that's driven from our thoughts to our bones by the information technology, by the chemistry that's produced by the trillions of cells. Um, we talk about the gut brain a lot, and forgive me for going forward, without permission, so to speak, but I think 4.5 pounds, which is what the
mm,
brain weighs. Um, but that's why it's important, man. It's important because there's a lot of two-way streets. And I think you want to ask more questions about the gut brain, so I'll hold off. But yeah, there's 9 specific axes, and they're everywhere. So it's kind of like the highway, and then you've got all the side streets, state routes to get to the more detailed areas, defined areas. But that's why it's important because
mm.
it's important for everything.
Okay. So for someone, in my shoes on the other side, on this side of the podcast, what are some can you explain some maybe surprising connections between the gut health and other parts of the body that most people really don't realize?
Sure, sure. That's definitely exciting to talk about. And hopefully listeners find this exciting as well. So I mean, bones, I think is one of people don't.
This is for me, not for them.
People
Just
don't
talk to
think
me.
about their bones, right? They don't think about I mean, maybe they do because they think about eating calcium. They know that calcium has to be eaten and milk. They think about milk. I don't think milk is great for bones, but right? There's a lot of advertising. We won't get into that. But the point is the chemistry that's produced. We talked about this a little bit last time. The short chain fatty acids, right? So the SCFAs, the short chain fatty acids, are the chemical messengers or the information technology that's created by the bacteria in the gut, and they stimulate osteoblasts. So bone production is managed by bacteria in your gut. And, without bones, we would just be these
Okay.
mushes of mucus on the floor, right? So bones are really important. And
A little bit.
I think another fascinating thing I mean, the cardiac relationship is tremendous, but just specifically thinking about, I don't get the acronym wrong. I believe it's TMAO. It could be, yeah, TMAO, which is an acronym. It stands for a chemical compound, which is cardiotoxic, and it's only produced by certain bacteria. So, you know,
Okay.
again, thinking about, well, it's not just, getting bloated, or it's not just, my emotional state. I mean, 90%, as they say, I mean, statistics are statistics, but they say, we'll say the greatest majority of serotonin and dopamine is produced in the gut. So there, you just have a lot of really exciting, surprising, and I think that people know about that, more about the serotonin and dopamine, but they probably don't know about the bones, and they probably don't know maybe about the heart. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty surprising. I was fascinated when I learned about the bones.
That
And
that
so when, people talk
that
to
is
me,
fascinating.
right, they ask me like a menopausal, a woman in her 50s, will ask me, so what do the doctor told me I'm osteopenia, I have osteopenia. What do I do? And I'm like, well, you should be a microbiome patient, It's like, well, what? And this is why. you know?
Yeah. Well, that is fascinating, honestly. So the gut brain connection that you've talked about, there's a science behind it. At least I know that now, but it could also be seen maybe as like a trend, right? Because of the way it's presented sometimes.
Right.
So is the gut brain connection as powerful as some claim, or is it an overhyped buzzword, or can it be?
Right. So I definitely always try to keep it real, right? I talk about
Mhm.
things like this with patients. I want to be confident, because I am and I've seen it work, but I also want to be practical and pragmatic. So I always tell them, it's healthcare. I'm confident, but I don't want to guarantee anything. And sometimes the
Mhm.
changes are subtle over a longer period of time. It's not always dramatic. The
Mhm.
Parkinson's patient should be doing this because it's good for them, not because it's going to cure their Parkinson's, but it's going to make their disease state less intense and severe for a longer period of time, vis-a-vis increasing their quality of life. Now, if they don't value that, okay, so can't service them,
Mhm.
but we can't avoid the fact that there's the vagus nerve comes straight out of the brain and innervates the gut. So you've got this massive innervation that's directly connecting the brain and the gut. So I think the brain gut axis is probably the least buzzworthy of them. But yeah, I mean, I think like anything, I guess one of the challenges that I come up that comes to me is, people's excitement. They're like, oh, I heard the microbiome, I have this kid, he's ADD and I heard the microbiome. And I'm like, okay, yes, mom, I'm going to help you, but I don't want to be like, yes, yes, here we go. Because, it, if they keep feeding their kid, tricks, cereal or whatever else, there's going to be potentially problems, not tricks. I think tricks is pretty clean, but what's the one I'm thinking of? Like the colorful Rice Krispies, whatever, like the colors, the dyes that they're talking about now that they're going to get rid of their neurotoxic,
They're all bad, man. I'm
whatever,
sorry. They're all sugar.
it's
They're
all
all
crazy.
bad.
I grew up
Yeah.
with puffed kamut,
Yeah.
puffed corn, and I used to hate, most kids don't mind this question in first grade, but when I was in grade school, I hated let's get to know everybody. What's your favorite cereal? Because kids would be like normal cereals. And then it'd get to me right in the 80s.
Lucky Charms.
Right, right. In the 80s. And I'm like, puffed corn with puffed kamut. And people are like, oh, loser. I got a lot as a kid, but I'm ranting again.
Oh,
But yeah,
poor Noah. Oh,
no,
I wanna go and hug, little Noah now. I feel
no.
so bad.
I got therapy next week. So yeah, I mean, I think you can't avoid that, right? There's serious anatomical
Yeah.
connections, and that highway is driving communication. So it's definitely real.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, like, in the future that we're gonna be treating, because you said I have therapy next week, so this is a perfect segue to this question. But do you think that we'll be treating anxiety, depression by focusing on gut health instead of just prescribing medication?
Yeah, and not necessarily instead of. I mean, ideally that it's part of the conversation, right? Ideally that it's just part of the standard of care conversation. So you don't have to go to Dr. Segal. You can go to Joe Schmo, who graduates from community college, medical school, or whatever, and you get to that office, like, well, listen, we have options. First thing, want to make sure, that no one's hurting you. You're in a safe space. Make sure that things going on, take into consideration socioeconomic factors, and then present them with a treatment plan that's like, hey, exercise is really important for your health. Eating, fruits and vegetables is really important. If you're living on McDonald's and never exercising, you might be, sad and the drugs won't work and neither will the microbiome. And then we also have microbiome
Right.
optimization because that chemistry changes your thoughts. And we also have drugs like last but not least, and surgery, we could do a lobotomy. I mean, you just kind of work your way up that truthful, evidence-based situation. And yeah, I mean, I would hope that's my hope, right? That's what I'm doing. I want this to be normalized, right? Like normalized
Sure.
microbiome work,
Yeah.
nor free the
Yeah.
brain gut connection or
Yeah.
whatever.
We should go pick it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
go
yeah.
pick it.
But not necessarily. I mean, I think it can replace a lot of it, but again, I'm very balanced. I mean, I'm biased in ways. I mean, you see the way I answer
Yeah.
questions, but I'm also I really
Yeah.
I'm not anti any of that. But they don't seem to work. I mean, again, we're over medicated and super unhappy. So something's got to change, and it makes sense that we should go this route.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely accurate. We are over medicated, unfortunately.
And unhappy.
So have you ever seen a case where fixing the gut health turns someone's maybe mental or neurological health
Yes,
around?
absolutely. Yes, 100%. And I've
Can you give me
measured
an
it.
example of that?
Well, I mean, listen, I have cases I have cases that I think are very dramatic that I haven't, like schizophrenic, right? Their schizophrenia wasn't cured, but they were way more stable with way less medication. And then you've got like the generally anxious or generally, not like these people are not diagnosed with type 2 bipolar. They're just generally a little bit melancholy and using not the microbiome, but using like a neurotransmitter analysis potentially, which gives the metabolites. So it's a dried urine study to look at the metabolites. I can see like we'll call it brain on fire, and they report being like really melancholy. And then I can, they report that their life, like they've got more zest, and things aren't perfect, no, but that they report to me they're out with friends again, and they feel better, 180 degrees. That they'll say things like that to me, and then we can look at their metabolite and their neurotransmitter metabolites in the dried urine study, and I can see a brain more balanced. So it's not
Mm.
always like that, right? You can look at MRIs and people can feel good and they have lots of problems. So it's not like always like so linear, but that's as specific as I can get. I mean, I don't have like another story per se. I can't mention names, but I would
Okay.
say, yeah, I mean, in practice, I see things like
So, yeah, so foods, right, could really affect the outcomes of our treatments, no matter what they are. Foods, you got, like you said, this the sugar in the food that we eat, the preservatives that we don't realize are there. What's the worst possible diet for gut health?
easy to answer, carnivore. So everything again, sort of every problem that we solve, we create more problems, right? So I'm not saying the carnivore diet's bad. I mean, I think the carnivore diet can save someone's life if the need or the goal is there to quickly get into ketosis, drop tremendous amounts of weight. But just like taking antibiotics, we then have to rebuild our microbiome because it matters long term. So the thing is that the microbiome, the bacteria is sustained off of the byproducts or the ingredients of fruits and vegetables, right? Fiber and polyphenols and antioxidants, excuse me, of which protein has none of that, right? So protein doesn't have any of that.
Mm,
Protein has amino acids, and those amino acids are very helpful. And people people should eat meat, maybe not 3 times a day, every day for long periods of time. Maybe, right? It'd be too controversial, but yeah. So I would say the worst diet for the microbiome specifically, not saying for people, not saying for other goals, but for the microbiome, it's carnivore. That's the worst diet for the microbiome.
mm. I was considering doing the carnivore diet. I know a couple people that do it, but do you think, now this is, I guess, a question for me. Do you think it is okay to do the carnivore diet, say, I don't know, kind of like a whole 30 approach, and then kind of getting back to a normal, balanced diet? Could that hurt a person?
Um, I don't know, for a person. I don't want to be a purist. I believe in the body's resilience. So you'll always get that confidence from me that the body, we largely don't control a lot, and the body is very resilient. So
Yeah.
I know, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's going to be an impact, right? Like, oh, doc, I'm only taking antibiotics for 7 days. Okay, well, that changes your microbiome. I'm only doing this for 30
Mm.
days, this diet. Well, that's going to change your microbiome. Is it going to be detrimental? No, probably not. Let's not be dramatic about it, but everything we do matters or nothing matters. And everything does. It's just to what degree.
S- So then let me ask it this way then. I know we're double clicking a little too much into this one, but so you're saying carnivore would be the worst, right? Because you're all about balance, right? Every time we talk, it's kind of what I get from you. You're about balance. There's a balanced approach for
I'm
everything.
looking for it,
But
man.
what
That's
would
that's yeah.
well, that's good. When you're looking for it, you find it, right? So, but what's the other extreme? Like, let's say I had to choose one, right? If someone had to choose a diet, they had a all fiber diet or an all protein diet. Like, what is the better for the microbiome,
Oh, easy for
for
the
the gut
microbiome,
health?
fiber, gut health fiber. But without protein, people you can't do that forever either. You can't be a fruitarian and just eat fruit. That's not healthy.
Sure,
So yeah, but for the microbiome, it's
sure.
an easy question to answer because the microbiome doesn't benefit really at all um, from protein intake. It's not a microbiome concept,
Mm,
really.
okay. So probiotics, prebiotics, fermented foods. What actually works? What's just or and what's just good marketing?
Yeah, right. I think there's been tremendous marketing with probiotics. You see it now more with prebiotics. And fermented foods don't get enough marketing, probably. Look, food is medicine, but food is hard to measure. And lifestyle is, again, that long term, right? Everything we eat is either helping us or hurting us. And it might take 40 or
Mhm.
50 or 60 or 70 years for that to impact us, both helpful or hurtful. So it's very difficult. ask a kid, do you want a marshmallow now, one, or do you want to wait and get two? Most kids are going to
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
one now because most kids are
Yeah,
people and
for
people are
sure.
people. And this is adults are not that different.
Mhm.
So, but, that being said, so probiotics is largely a scam, I think, because you're only really commercially getting bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. That being said, if we didn't have it in our food supply chain the way it is, we might be suffering more. That being said, the microbiome is extremely complex, and lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are the tip of the iceberg. And that does not mean someone's got a great microbiome or is healthy or is doing anything good for themselves. But if kombucha is part of your daily beverage and miso soup is part of your weekly soups and sauerkraut is part of your daily intake of vegetables, these are pickles. I mean, these are healthy foods for sure. It can be problematic for certain individuals, but yeah, I think it's really good marketing. Again, it's the confusing type of marketing, right? Because there's truth behind it. So it's the dangerous type of marketing
Yeah.
because it is true, but
Yeah.
what they're saying isn't
They're
true.
not lying.
Right.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. Are we overcomplicating gut health?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I want to say yes, because I love things to be balanced and simple. It is complex, right? Physiology, humanity, the thinking about everything we've talked about, right? The depth of all that is extremely complex. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper into these, visual models too of like the intestinal barrier and zonulin and the biomarkers and the bacteria and all this microscopic stuff. But I think it's over again, we've created this lifestyle, right? This modern lifestyle for comfort and efficiency, but we've created other
Mhm.
problems. So now we've created this fluorescent
Mhm.
lights that impact our microbiome,
Right.
thoughts that are blue light that impacts our microbiome. This stuff has been proven
Yeah.
to be deleterious. So then we had to respond with more confusion and complexity.
Sure.
So yes,
Yeah. Okay, so then if somebody just wanted to improve their microbiome starting today, what's the simplest, most effective change they could make?
easy. Either, well, I would say eat your fruits and vegetables. Pick your favorite fruit. I like plums, eat it every day. I like broccoli, eat it every day. If you could do both plums and broccoli, at least, every day, something, that's it, man. Simple, easy peasy. Eat an apple, have some cucumbers, fruits and vegetables. Eat your favorite fruit and or
Mm,
vegetable every day. It's not expensive. It's not hard. It doesn't take a lot of prep. And that's it. That's super easy first thing to do.
that's awesome. That's great advice. I am guilty of not doing that, honestly. But then when I do eat like the vegetables I like, I'm like, why am I not eating this more? Kind of like your favorite restaurant that you forget about for a year. You're like, why don't I eat here more often?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing. But all right, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a little about the like chronic illness and the gut and how deep does it go? How many, common chronic conditions do you think will eventually trace back to gut dysfunction?
All of them. However,
Wow.
however, associations, right? So you mentioned like I forget exactly what context, but like like the gut doesn't control the brain. It's associated, right? It's associated. So I think you'll see in time, if not already, I could probably prove it already. You can give me a list of an endless list, and I probably one by one, I just chop it down, chop it down, chop it down. I'd be able to make a connection, a bridge, especially using AI. I could probably
Mhm.
bridge that gap for every single chronic condition, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but to what degree? And there's so many moving parts to on that individual. Is that so? It's related. It's associated. It could be impactful, but for this individual, is it going to be subjectively or objectively measurable? So there's another factor there. But yes, every single
Mhm.
chronic condition, to some degree, yes, more or less.
Okay. So microbiome testing is it's a big part of your practice, obviously.
Yeah.
Outside of your desire of it becoming a standard, do you think it's going to become a standard part of healthcare in the next decade?
If I had to guess, I would say the way that I'm seeing things shift over the past 5 to 10 years, I think that's reasonable to expect. I think that's reasonable. It could happen.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
What are you seeing that's making you think that? Like what
I think it was much more
specifically?
obscure. I think when I started doing this, it was more obscure. It was harder for me to get people. It was more of me being like, "Hey, do you want this?" And it could just be my own personal growth. So again, it's hard for me to know where this to measure the truth
Yeah,
of
I
this
guess.
this data set,
Yeah.
but in my own experience, I've seen more people come to me and saying, "Hey, I want what you have. I heard the microbiome is potent and you can help." So again, it could be my growth professionally, so that could be skewing that observation. But
Yeah,
if you took that away, yes, I just see that also like the referrals, right? Like the gastroenterologists
sure.
I mean, I got this one guy. I feel like it's a handful, but the handful of people do understand and will have the conversations. I just got this one guy who's really excited about referring to me, and I would measure that too. Like if I got two or three of those guys, that's also like a change in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I could see more of that than your experience because that's an exterior, you know, thing that you don't have control over. So,
Correct.
yeah, I would say that more. Awesome. I hope it does. I hope it does.
Yeah.
Have you so again, microbiome testing, like you said, it was like obscure or whatever. And now hopefully we're getting to a place that it becomes a little more, common. But that said, coming into these situations with a doctor like yourself, we don't know what to expect, right? We don't know what the testing is going to result. We don't know you know, what you prescribe. We might be coming in for something, but then you prescribe something and then it does something else. So have you ever had a patient where kind of fixing their gut health resolved a problem they thought was completely unrelated?
I've just had people tell me like, my hair is more thick or my hair. I always think the hair is an interesting thing people talk about. It's probably because I give essential fatty acids, right? I mean, I
It's
give
important. Hair is important.
what's
Come
wrong?
on
What's wrong with
now.
us, man? Yeah. So that's something I'm thinking about. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Also because I usually relate it all back to it. So it's like unrelated. Maybe the hair. That's like the one that comes to mind. My hair is thicker and more luscious, and okay, great.
Why not?
Or maybe even
Hey,
immunity. I've had people that come to
I
me because they've got diarrhea and they're like, "My whole house got COVID," and I didn't. So
okay.
yeah,
So let's talk about the future of gut health and I guess biohacking. Like we're seeing a lot of companies, or we're seeing companies popping up offering kind of, I wouldn't say a lot, but companies popping up and offering personalized gut health microbiome tests.
sure.
Do you think it's the future, or are we just not there yet scientifically?
No, I think scientifically we're there. We're probably beyond there. Yes, I think that we're there scientifically and technologically. You need someone. The problem I see in the commercially available is the lack of the doctor patient relationship, right? So I do have people who are like,
Mm,
I just did this Viome test. I think it's Viome. I just did this Viome test, right? At home, commercial available, citizen level type of study. And so I don't
mm.
want to be your patient, but I need your help. And I'm like, oh, you're still going to be my
But you have to
patient,
take,
but I won't put you
yeah,
in my program. Like, let's use what we can.
yeah,
And, it's not helpful to just do the study and then get this like 15-page
right,
report that says everything. Like
right.
genetics too. People come to me with, I do this. I mean, it's part of my professional, I guess, service level. One of my service levels is, people come with confusion and I sell clarity,
Mm,
right? So like they'll do these
right.
home studies, right? They'll do this like really sexy branded marketable thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I spit in the
yeah.
tube and $69, but no, doc, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, so and honestly, it's for me, I don't mind that at all because then they know for sure I'm not selling tests. I don't sell tests. I sell the
Mhm.
relationship. I sell the clarity. So I think that's what we're lacking is the technology's there, but the individualization vocation I think is lost in translation.
So if you could make one major advancement happen in gut health research today, tomorrow, next week, what would you want to discover?
I personally would want to discover I'd want to discover the next big bacteria, like the one that recently has been getting a lot of attention is this sulfobibrio. It related to Parkinson's. So if I can find the next keystone
Mm.
species or just the most important, again, I talk about this a lot, right? There's like only a handful that we know about. And there's an ocean that we are still investigating. So I'd love to find the next, keystone species that's the most chemically controlling some aspect of healthcare or physiology that could lessen the burden of disease on people. That'd be great.
This time has been awesome, dude. I'm telling you, next time we're just gonna pick one topic because I think we both get ourselves in trouble, and we just double click a little too much, sometimes triple click and right click in properties every single question. So we want to we, we need to just pick something and talk about it. But let's start closing this out a little bit.
Sure.
I wanted to do something a little different, something fun. I've never actually done this on my show, but if it goes well with you, I might do it again with my other guests. So we'll see.
All
We'll
right.
see how it goes. So this is
Experiments on me.
this is the quick. Oh yeah. Hey, listen, whatever. So this is the quick fire round. Okay, so I'm gonna throw out a common gut health claim, and you tell me if it's legit or if it's BS, and then why. And then we'll just jump from one to the next to the next. I'm gonna throw five out at you. You ready?
Yeah.
Timer's going. Kombucha is a gut health miracle.
Miracle? No. But helpful? Yes.
Why?
Oh, why?
Okay, why?
No, it's not a miracle because, we don't rely on miracles. And a miracle, I mean, it's not a miracle. It helps some people more than others. And that's because it does contain live active cultures and does have a um, good chemistry, information there produced by that bacteria, that living active culture, but it's not a miracle. No.
Okay,
Or
you
a
should
miracle
take a
cure. It's not a
daily
miracle cure.
probiotic.
It's a miracle, but it's not a miracle cure.
Okay, okay, you should take a daily probiotic.
I don't.
Why?
Because again, like I said, the microbiome is complex and I'm more into the detailed optimization rather than the shotgun approach of let me just load me up with lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. I don't take a daily. I do take probiotics on occasion. I do take prebiotics I go through, microbiome optimization steps. Yeah. But no, I don't take one.
Artificial sweeteners destroy your microbiome. Legit BS.
No, legit, 100% legit. True. Don't do it.
Why?
Uh, it, I don't know the actual, I know that it kills bacteria. I don't know how, but I know that it's associated with a lower diversity in gut bacteria.
Gluten intolerance is mostly in people's heads. Legit or BS?
BS, but it's real. Meaning glucose intolerance is real, but most people, it's probably in their heads culturally. It's not as big of a problem. Oh, that's really controversial. BS, because no, I mean, gluten intolerance is mostly in people's heads. Oh, I mean, yeah, I think there's a phenomenon where it's contagious. It is real, but I think I think that it's
I'm not asking about celiac disease.
right,
Gluten intolerance
right.
is mostly
Um,
in people's head.
no,
Be careful. My wife has gluten-free diet.
yeah, no, no, it's gluten intolerance is real, but it's also like, is it the glyphosate? Like gluten intolerance is real. It's real.
All right, last one. Gut health determines your skin health. Legit or BS?
Associated with, it does not determine. It is associated, but it
Okay.
does not determine. It's not the determinant of your skin.
Okay. All right. Well, that was fun. All right. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, man. Woo.
Get your door prize on the way out. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the doctor versus patient, like who has it tougher, right? If you could swap places with your average patient for one day, what do you think would surprise you most about their experience?
Their level of discomfort. I think that I'm thank God pretty empathetic. I think it's also impossible to always know or to know at all what people are going through. I'm not good
Sure.
with being sick at all. I'm a big baby, typical man.
Mm,
So I think I'd be surprised by their level of discomfort. Like, wow, they're going through this. Okay.
gotcha. And what do you think would surprise them the most about your side of things?
Um, the attention to detail, maybe like the focus that I put on them. Maybe they'd be like, maybe they expect it. I think they do expect it. But that's what I would say. I think that the level of like attention focus, like at that moment, like when I'm going through building a protocol for somebody, I'm hyper focused, and this is the part where I can't figure out the AI how to help me because I can feed algorithms in and get things out. But there's always with every single
Sure.
patient, multiple steps. There's always this situation where I've got like 5 tabs open and I'm looking
Mm,
at their history. I'm looking at you know, their normal blood chemistry, their specialty blood chemistry, their microbiome stuff.
mm,
And then, and I'm putting it all together. And then also their allergies and sensitivities. And I'm just like,
Mm.
there's a lot of focus on it. I think they'd be surprised by that. I think they think that my job's a little easier.
I hope they don't think that, but yeah. So, all right, Dr. Siegel, you're in charge of rewriting the medical curriculum.
Right.
What's one thing about gut
Sign me
health
up.
that's absolutely needs to be taught to every new doctor?
Every new doctor needs to know the basics, the 4R protocol, right? Remove, replace, reinoculate, and repair. Remove the problematic bacteria, replace them with better bacteria, reinoculate the entire system, and then repair the intestinal barrier and the inflammation. So the 4R protocol, which is pretty standard in most microbiome studies, or protocols, would be that's basic. That should be every doctor.
And then what's one thing about patient communication that needs to be overhauled?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know. Um,
Okay.
I don't know.
It's okay not to know something.
Yeah, because between
You
text,
can't know everything.
yeah, I mean, texting, emailing, like there's a lot of communication. I'm not part of the normal system.
Yeah.
Like, so it's hard for me to say. I don't know. Can't answer that one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's now wrap up with the future of health. So if we had this conversation 10 years from now, which we will, watch, we're going to be on a podcast in 10 years talking about the first two times we got together. But what's the biggest shift in gut health or the doctor patient relationship that you think we'll be talking about?
So I don't know about gut health specifically, aside from it being more just talked about more as a
Hmm.
leverage point. Um, but I think that the I don't know how much the doctor patient relationship will exist in 10 years. That's what I don't know. I think there's there's this happening and there's a lot of
Yeah.
CVS drive
There's a lot.
through
Yeah.
bot type
Yeah.
of fast food
Yeah.
healthcare. So I don't know that I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest change. Yeah. The lack of relationship.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. All right. Finish this sentence for me. The biggest myth about gut health that people need to stop believing right now is.
Yogurt is going to help you. Yogurt's going to help you.
Mm,
Yogurt's helping
mm.
anybody.
If you had to sum up your entire philosophy on health in one sentence, can you do that? And what would it be?
You made it easy for us. Yeah, health is a journey. Commit to it. That's my liner, my one liner, man.
I love that. I love that. I've used it, by the way, since our first podcast, just FYI. So I hope you didn't trademark because I can't afford paying you royalties
I
on that.
need to do that.
What's the weirdest but totally legitimate gut health tip you swear by?
All right. Totally
And
legitimate.
I know, don't swear. We don't swear.
Yeah,
No,
but
anyway, go ahead.
totally
Just kidding.
legitimate. I don't know. How about mostly legitimate? I do ask my
How
patients.
about 70% legitimate?
There
How
we
about
go.
that?
Fine. I do ask my patients to do a burp test, which is like it's not the most evidence-based way to measure a hydrochloric acid. It's got enough traction where it's talked about at, Mayo Clinic level. It's there, it's around. But it's not one of the three gold standard ways to actually measure gastric acidity. But basically, I rely on asking my patients to wake up in the morning, swallow a little bit of water mixed with baking soda, and tell me how long it takes for them to burp. And the idea there is like if you take Alka-Seltzer, put it in, very alkaline, and you put it into Coca-Cola, which is phosphoric acid, it bubbles up. So if your stomach is very
Yeah,
acidic, which it's supposed to be, and you take this alkaline substance, it should bubble up and you should belch relatively quickly. And that tells me that the stomach
right.
acid is youthful, present, and healthy. And then so
Does its
it's
job. Yeah.
mostly legitimate. I've been studying.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I know I've held you hostage long
I
enough,
do have
Dr.
to run. I
Siegel,
do
and
have
I
to
know
run.
you have a patient waiting on you, but thank you again for making yourself available and jumping on Beyond Adjustments. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much Amit, for the time and the opportunity. Keep me in the loop. All right. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we did it. We laughed. We learned. We probably made you question your last meal choices. Dr. Noah Siegel once again proved that gut health isn't just about digestion. It's about everything. And that doctor patient relationships, yeah, they're a lot like dating, built on trust, good communication, and the occasional awkward silence. So, if you love today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Beyond Adjustments so you don't miss more mind expanding, gut loving content. Follow Dr. Siegel and soak up more of his knowledge before your gut microbiomes take over the world. And hey, if you've learned anything today, maybe go tell your doctor thank you. or at least stop diagnosing yourself with rare diseases on WebMD. Until next time, stay healthy, trust your gut, and always don't forget to laugh, because your laughter, my friends, is the best probiotic of them all. I'll see you next time. Cue that music.